Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer before we begin. We want to thank you, Father, for, again, as how you've created us. And we thank you for, in these last days, giving us the capacity to understand more about the hearts that you've given us and to grow our hearts and to grow within our hearts. We ask your blessing as we share and as we share a community heart together. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Who remembers the first principles from last night? Or the first principle? You remember it was the image of God. And attachment, exactly. And the attachment is expressed in three bonds: parent, child, sibling, and spouse. And we looked at that in the brain, and we looked at that in scriptures. And the second principle, exactly, dominion. Thank you. So God, what is the nature of the dominion? We were given dominion over the creatures of the earth. What is the nature of that dominion? And God modeled it for us. He modeled it for us in a very unique way. It's defined by freedom. And that freedom, especially with the human race, is freedom of choice. And that means that we have room to make mistakes. How many have made it through this far in life without mistakes? Okay, every moment we generate mistakes. And so God has given us room to mature and to grow. And that room is what we call family. Someone said the most important day of our life was the day we were born. The second most important day of our life was when we found out why. And that is actually the journey of our life, is why are we here? So that is connected with another question, and that is, what does it mean to be human? How are we different from all the other creatures on the face of the earth? Other creatures have bonds. We talked about the three bonds. And their bonds have a similarity to ours, right? Swans have mates, and swans mate for life, right? And wolves travel in packs. We can think of a few other examples. But even though they're similar in the way that they bond, it's not identical, is it? It's not identical to the attachment bonds that we as human beings have, because we share with each other the same bonds that God shares with us. That is that likeness that we are created in. Well, today we're going to talk about what does it mean to be like God. We talked about what does it mean to be created in the image of God. I think I misspoke there about likeness. We were created in our attachments is our image. Today it is our likeness. And this is a concept that requires use of our imagination. And we can't make every example stand on all fours, but let's see if we can work with what we started with yesterday. We had this idea of a house, and we had this idea of 4 rooms. So we're going to go with that. And I'm sure we can think of other examples, but let's work with the 4 rooms of a house. Well, what are the 4 things that our hearts long for? Well, last night was the first one, right? It is, we long for attachment. And that attachment, to repeat, is how we belong. And that belonging, in case we forgot, is parent, child, sibling, and spouse. There are no other belongings in the way we network as human beings. That describes the entire human race from beginning to end. Very simple how God puts things together. Networking is complicated, but the foundation is simple. It's three bonds. He's three, and we are, he is three and one, right? We are many and three. Kind of an inverse relationship. So number one was attachment. Number two, joy. That's another reason why we're here. And joy simply means, both biblically and neurologically, that someone is genuinely glad to be with me. Number three, third room, if we'll call it that, right? Room 1, 2, joy. 3 is synchronization. Now, what do I mean by synchronization? I use the word synchronization because we're talking about what we call a shared state of mind. How many of you know the experience? You get to know someone well enough, you can finish each other's thoughts before, you don't have to explain. I know what you're talking about. I know what you're feeling. We both had that experience. Abraham was a friend of God, right? Moses knew God face to face. They had this shared mind state. Number 4, the fourth room, individuality, or individual and group identity. Now, what do we mean by that? There are many ways of expressing this, but let's try to express it this way. Okay, I'm being accepted for who I really am. Is that a longing that we have? Please accept me for who I really am, not who you expect me to be. And as a result of accepting me for who I am, I'm able to benefit the group through my God-given abilities. And my God-given abilities, of course, come from the identity that he gave me. So these levels we'll describe as 4 rooms. 4 rooms in a house. Who's the house, by the way? That's kind of implied in the question, right? We're the house. And just like we have houses that we live in, God has come to live in our house. He's come to live in this body. And we're going to think of 4 rooms of a house with brick and mortar and boards and so forth. But think also at the same time of this body and 4 rooms inside of this body. And if we want to be technical about it, it's like we talked about last night, it's our right brain. So when we enter a home, this is kind of an old-fashioned word, we enter the foyer, right? And this is akin to our first longing. We enter someone's home, in that first entryway, we're longing for attachment. And attachment is the foundation of all relationships. It's the foundation of what's going to happen next as we get into the rest of the other rooms. And from the foyer, what are we expecting? By the way, let me just mention this. Anytime we enter into a relationship without an attachment, that is abuse. You know where the Bible talks about anyone who climbs over the sheep pen any other way than the main gate? That's considered a robber. So we enter into a relationship ipso facto, shall we say, expecting attachment. That's what we long for. Is God going to give us a stone when we need bread? Okay, he's going to enter into attachment. He's not going to pretend and play around with attachments. So attachment is our foundation of all relationships, and we know that they are 3. So from the foyer, we step into, there's another nice word, parlor. I live in a very humble home, and up behind us is this mansion, and it probably has the blue room and the gold room. It has all those things, I'm sure. But from the we enter the foyer. From the foyer, we enter the parlor, what's a more common name for that? It's a living room. Okay? All living rooms come in all sizes. But in the living room, what do we have in there? We have our best furniture, right? Our curtains, best curtain. We have, it's the place where we receive our guest. Okay? And more than that, with all the accoutrements in that room, what we are expecting is, we are expecting to be in joy together. That's what we look forward to when we meet in each other's homes. This is where, what does joy together mean? What does joy mean? It means genuinely glad to be together. And this is the room for that. Where do we go from the living room, especially toward lunchtime? We can go to the dining room, right? But we might go to the kitchen, depending on how your house is set up, right? And in the kitchen, we're going to use that as a metaphor for this word synchronization. We could use the word attunement. But what does it mean? It means that we have a shared emotional state together. Now, that state, we don't have to be talking. This is important. Now, obviously, this can happen in any room, but we're just going to say in the kitchen. If we have skilled people who know what they're doing in the kitchen, do they have to be talking to each other? No, they each kind of knows what the other's doing, right? And this happens in all walks of life. When we're good at something and we're next to somebody who knows how to do it, we just get into that, what we call synchronization state, and we're just enjoying each other. And so the kitchen is where the cooks and all who join them can enjoy synchronization together. So shared physical activity does not necessarily mean we have to be talking, but we could be talking. And by sharing physical activity and as a result, emotional state together, we are connecting emotionally just by doing things we enjoy together. So we connect emotionally. When we connect emotionally, we mirror, and our brains have mirror neurons. We mirror other individuals' emotional state. So when we are sad, they join us in sadness, vice versa. If someone else is sad, then I join them in sadness. That's how we build trust together. When they hurt, we hurt. When they're happy, we're happy. I don't know if you've been in situations where you're sharing a story of your experience, and you can tell by people's faces whether you're connecting. Because, no, they didn't have necessarily the exact experience you had, but they had a similar one, and that's all that matters. Because their similar experience, they're able to connect all the parts of your experience to all the parts of their experience, and they're learning something because this is what you did in that experience. And they say, yeah, well, this is what I would have liked to have done in my experience. This person understands me. I understand them. So happiness is the shared experience. It's what we call returning to joy from any of these negative emotions. Well, from the kitchen, we go into what we call the family room. Maybe we can call it a den. I don't know what other term we want to use. But it's the place where we feel the most free to be ourselves. Okay? There might be a ping pong table in there. There might be chairs, something we can watch together. But it's a place where we can act out of our God-given identity. And we recognize that in our deepest soul, we recognize that we are free. We're not in a library. We're not in a museum where we have to follow certain rules of decorum. We are actually finding who we are in each other's presence. Okay? This is God-likeness. This is not a rule book. This is where each of us, we have individuality, but we also are expressing a group identity together. Because there's something about what we're doing that's like all of us, but there's something that's unique to me in how I'm acting. So we synchronize the heart by what? By what we long for. These are the 4 longings of our hearts. Separated from God, we don't understand what we're really longing for, and that's why it's been so hard, probably for 6,000 years, to articulate what it is that our hearts are longing for. But because the pain of this earth has reached a state where there's so much damage, that has actually given us the capacity to articulate what it is that's actually wrong. So all the harm that Satan is trying to do to the human race has actually given us knowledge of our own hearts, knowledge that we can actually put into words what is in these rooms. And how do we correct this separation from God? So let's just call that being outside the house. Okay, so to be with God, we come in the house. And so we come into each other's presence. That was why we could say it wasn't Jesus going to church or the synagogue. The church was coming to him. Wherever he was, these 4 rooms were taking place. He was the 4 rooms of humanity, and people felt these 4 things in his presence. That was church. So the right brain was being healed in his presence. When people come into our homes, the right brain is being healed in our presence. If these 4 things are taking place. So maybe, just maybe, science can now give us, or is giving us, the insights into this text that we read for Scripture this morning, Romans 8:26. Let's read it again. Likewise, Romans 8, verse 26, likewise the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. Does it mean he doesn't have permission to utter them? Too deep for words. I like that. Too deep for words. But once we put it into words, we can say, yeah, that is it. That is what I feel. And we can go into great detail on that, which we don't have time this morning. So what are the 4 levels, the 4 rooms that are in our brain? Okay, here they are. Room number 1, thalamus, and then room 2, amygdala. 3 is the cingulate cortex. It's kind of like in the middle of our brain. It looks like a banana, the way it forms. And then the right prefrontal orbital cortex. The right orbital prefrontal cortex. You put that in order in the right words. That's right above our right eye. Okay, all of our heart longings can be summarized under what? 4 fundamental longings. Okay, let's go through those one more time. Attachment, joy, shared mind state, and our individual and group identity. Okay, this happens, it can happen in a moment, but for it to develop, it happens actually over a long period of time. And it's practically impossible as adults for this process of these 4 rooms to take place immediately. It's we are supposed to, if the brain is healthy, we're supposed to be able to recover in 60 seconds. But this could take years, depending on the damage that we've experienced in life. Children, or especially infants, they are learning this experience with their mothers of going through those 4 rooms within a very short time. Well, we call this full heart-to-heart. The 4 rooms, what we just named them, our attachment circuit in our thalamus, our return to joy circuit in our amygdala, our synchronization circuit in our cingulate cortex, and our individual and group identity in our right orbital prefrontal cortex. Those are what we look at when we're looking to the face of an individual. So full face to full face is the same thing as in the Bible we say full heart to full heart. The Bible uses this word countenance, which is often interpreted to the word face, and it's true because the face is it's what we focus in on, but it really is the whole front of the body. And the Bible may say, well, his countenance is turned toward me or his countenance is turned against me, but we're going to focus in on the face. But the countenance, if we include that, is more of the idea of a full body to full body connection. Full face to full face, full heart to full heart, however we want to talk about it. Thalamus, okay, is attachment. We belong to each other in these 3 bonds. Amygdala, again. If the amygdala is working really well, what we would say is, I am beside myself with joy to be in your presence. That's what Jesus is saying to us. Okay? Can you, have you had those experiences of being, you haven't seen someone in a long time, and you see them, you know, maybe it's in the airport, maybe they come to your home, and you're just beside each other in joy to see each other. and you may express it, right? Depends on the culture, right? You may express it full body to full body, you know, and kiss on each cheek, depending on how we respond. That's God's response to us. Well, what about the next one again? Cingulate cortex. All right? Is what it really is saying is, I can trust you. Why? Because you're sharing and matching my emotional state, especially when I'm in distress. So anybody who matches our emotional state is automatically going to build trust. Because it just comes naturally that if they're matching my emotional state, they're actually anticipating what I need. And it's a wonderful feeling. You do that, you'll have friends all the time. And lastly again, the 4th room, right prefrontal cortex. When we share experiences together, you know, there are similar customs we may have, right? There are similar manners, accents, language. In other words, with these shared experiences, we develop what we call a group identity. Now, depending on the shared experience, I'm sure you've heard that in wartime, those who have been through very difficult experiences together, they have that shared experience, they bond for life. And they can't find anyone else that they can bond to as deeply as those buddies or whoever they were with in war, foxhole experience. So through shared experiences, we come to act like we belong together. How can God say, these are my people? Well, we've got 3 attachment bonds, right? But then we come to that 4th room, which is the, what do we call it, the playroom, with the rec room, whatever the term we want to use. That is where we are acting, even though we're acting individually, we're acting as we belong together. So the Lord can say to Satan, not only do we have the attachment, but they're acting like we belong to each other. So 80% of the Bible, as we talked about last night, is asking these same 4 non-verbal questions. Right? These are non-verbal. We put them in words, but we're speaking these things through our faces, through our countenances. So 80% of the Bible is asking this. 80% of our brain is asking this. The Bible is saying, God is saying through Scripture, non-verbally, because it's in the stories. It needs words to tell you so we can hear the story, but it's actually telling us that I belong to you, I'm glad to be with you, I synchronize with you, and in developing our group identity so that you, even though you're down there and I'm up here, you're feeling like you're up here by this group identity that you're experiencing. So 80% is the amount of, the percent in which our right brain is processing compared to 100%. So the 20% left would be our left brain. So the function of the right brain is technically what the Bible calls the heart. So if you went through the thesaurus, do your word search, you'd see a lot of words for the heart that would show up. But that's not really the tool you use to look for heart in Scripture. It is, 80% is story-based. That's why it's the heart. It's not, don't look for just the word heart. Look for these 4 rooms as you read the stories. That's the heart. And that's our right brain. Well, we know that we're made in God's image. And we're made in God's image through 3 bonds, right? Which we will refer to as, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, we will refer to as attachment love. Okay? It is 3 flavors, if you will, of attachment love. And these 3 flavors are written into our biology. And they're written into the way in which we socially connect. Parent-child, sibling, and spouse. But we're also made into his likeness. And we've now covered image and we've covered likeness. What stories in the Bible depict these 4 rooms? Every story, okay? But I'm going to pick 4. And these four are the foundation of Israel. And I call them the four fathers of Israel: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Now, think about them for just a minute. Just think with me. Let's start with Abraham. And think about what God is doing. Okay? He is, as in these stories, he's doing this in our lives. He's trying to arrange circumstances where we can see him in each of these rooms. And the question is, as we read these stories, did they recognize God in each of these rooms? So Abraham, does he recognize God as his father? Okay? So Abraham is called to be a father of what? And he has no children. He's called to be a father of a new kind of belonging. And this belonging is described as face-to-face with God. Okay? Not just spouse face-to-face, face-to-face with God. And we catch a glimpse of this. God is trying to draw a picture. If we look at Genesis 14, just read the whole chapter. This is a chapter where Abraham meets his spiritual father called Melchizedek. And in Hebrew culture, the greater blesses the lesser. So Melchizedek is actually acting like a father to Abraham. We don't know who Melchizedek is. There's evidence in the Bible that it's probably Shem. If it is Shem, there are 10 generations apart. And it's like saying, I'm your father, I'm your ancient father, you are my son, you're the one that I'm going to carry the flag of faith. Now, I want you to think about this principle, because what happened? Abraham, he leaves Haran when his father dies, and he goes to a land he doesn't know, and think of it as he's meeting an ancient father. And this is a type of meeting God. And this ancient father gives him a new identity. Now, let's look at next chapter. Read the whole chapter, Genesis 15. Genesis 15 is where Abraham is afraid. And he wonders, is God faithful? He's going to come through in his promise. And he falls asleep, and this gray darkness comes over him. And he feels this permanent separation, and he's told about what's going to happen in the next 400 years. And Abraham is actually afraid in God's presence. Can you imagine that? Being afraid in God's presence. Well, that's actually normal for us. But it's not supposed to be normal. So in this condition, it's as if you're coming in, let's go back to the house analogy, as if you're coming into the living room, and I'll just say this, someone turns the lights off, right? All right, maybe to think of it like that. God seeks to correct his fear by healing his emotion of being detached through fear. And so what's happening here is that God gives him hope by teaching Abraham that this promise is sure. How is it sure? Well, you remember the story. It's just like in the room here. You separate these animals, and a smoking fire pot goes down the middle, but that was an Old Testament example. They didn't have lawyers in those days. It was just a way of saying, if I don't follow and keep my end of the bargain, then this is what will happen to me. So he cuts the animals, puts them on each side, and God walks down the middle and says, if I don't keep what I'm saying, this is the strongest way of emphasizing that I'm going to follow through, then I will be torn or cut in half. So God will be the guarantee of his promise of attachment, belonging. I'm calling you for attachment, belonging. I may be detached, but I'm going to make sure that you are attached. Let's look at the second father of Israel, Isaac. Now, Isaac seems to have grown up without any trauma. At least it's not in the stories. And he grows up seeing his father's face. He's heard all the stories of his father. And he learns through the suffering face of his father, what life is about. And we come to this condition, this situation, and we know the story. Abraham is called to go up to the mountain. And Isaac becomes the willing, sacrificial lamb. How is he able to do that? Well, he's looking into his father's suffering face. And he's, as a result of looking into that suffering, he is synchronizing with his father's emotions. And he finds it. He finds within himself, because this is what he's practiced all his life, the capacity to rest in his father's presence, even unto death. He's resting in his father's love for him. He doesn't understand it. Probably his father understands it less than he does. But here's the situation. His synchronization circuits are ready for the experience in order to successfully make it through. So, like the lamb that was brought before his shearers, he openeth not his mouth. So, in other words, he had quieted himself. Well, this is likened to what we had in the kitchen. Don't have to necessarily be talking a lot, but we understand what each other's role is, and we're comfortable. As comfortable as we could be in this case. Well, Isaac, he thought it an honor to be considered worthy for this role. Let's think about, again, that cingulate cortex. Okay, he's building trust. He's built it throughout his life. Trust through emotional synchronization. And so he finds rest in the midst of the worst possible bad and scary experience. Until synchronization, it's natural for him to trust. This is what God is leading us through. Trust. You don't say, well, I'm just going to trust you. We build our synchronization circuits with God. But how do we do that? We do it with each other. Same circuit for each other, the same one that we use for God. And as we build it, we are able to synchronize with God. We're actually able to, as the Bible would say, see his face in that room. Did Isaac see God's face in that room? He saw it through his own father's face. He saw God's face. Now, this would be a very good example of what God intended for us at creation. He intended for us to grow up in a safe and comfortable environment. And this is where we could just develop absolute trust with no expectations other than absolute joy in his presence. Now, we don't live in that kind of a world. But if we practice being genuinely glad with each other, we're actually creating that presence. And what does the Bible say? Where two or more are together, there I am in the midst. What's he doing in the midst? He's building these 4 rooms. And so we're talking about the room number 3. Okay? This necessarily the kitchen. Well, why isn't this working as well? Well, of course. This was broken by Satan because he thought he could have a better system of government. And what was that system? His system is a system of authority in a kingly sense, right? In a king-slave model. God's system is a parent-child model. So we have these three fathers. Let's look at the last father. Oh, let me say this. I almost forgot this. What's one of the problems with the king-slave model? How many mistakes can you make? None. No choice. There is no room for mistake. Family model, plenty of rooms for mistakes. In the king-slave model, mistake is a sin. In the family model, it's a mistake. We're learning. We require room to make mistakes in order to mature. If you cannot make mistakes, you cannot mature. So that's a wonderful thing. Sometimes we think, well, if I made a mistake, oh, well, God's turned his back on me, and, that was sin. No. We are in the family system. The family system has a different set of rules than the king-slave system. We fall down. Think of children. So God is trying to teach us how the family system works by these four areas, these four rooms. Now, Jacob is probably a little easier to imagine because there are experiences in Jacob that are, what should we say, large and in your face, okay? And you remember the first experience. This was a pivotal experience in his life, not the first and only experience, but he had to run from his brother Esau. And he doesn't know how far Esau is behind him. And so he's exhausted, he rests that night, and he's given a dream. What was in that dream? There was a ladder, okay? And that ladder connected two worlds. Now, whenever there is a damage to one of our bonds, one of those three, okay, we know, we said last night, that when a bond is broken, that is the worst pain a human being can experience. It's worse than physical pain. Okay, that's why the cross. It wasn't all of the damage that was done to his body, it was that attachment bond that he was experiencing. That's what broke his heart. So it breaks our hearts too. We can't function. We're not built to function with a bond being broken. We actually lose capacity to function in all four rooms. The house is down, okay? It's not just one room. The whole house goes down. So Jacob, he's feeling afraid, and he's looking for relief. And it is God's authority, his protection, and his assurance that gives him relief. That's what he sees in this ladder. When Jacob sees the angels, he knows that he has assurance from God. I'm with you. I'm not forsaking you. I'm synchronizing with you. Okay? And this registers in his amygdala as well. What's in the amygdala? Okay, that's that living room that we were talking about. That the lights are not off. This God is glad, genuinely glad to be with me. And so I can have joy in his presence. And that joy carried him for the next 23 years. Now, did Jacob have a choice and choices of what he could do with the rest of his life? Plenty of them. But what did he say? He said, I'm going to give you a tenth because that's my way of saying that whatever I decide, whatever I do, I know that you're with me, and I just thank you for being with me. I don't have to be afraid. And so he could travel without having the fear of his brother because he now didn't have the fear of God abandoning him. What was the next pivotal experience in Jacob's world, his life? Full body to full body. This is full body to God. Remember he's lived through 23 years. He has all these children, and he's on his way to meet his brother, and he sends his family ahead, and he wants to spend time with God, and all of a sudden he gets a hand on the shoulder, doesn't know who that is, and he starts wrestling. And he wrestles all night. And what's the question that his body is asking? If you're fighting with somebody. I mean, this is ridiculous. Can I find joy in your presence? No, absolutely not. You're fighting for your life. But then the sun starts to rise, and this stranger who seems to have superhuman strength, right? He's all night long. This stranger reveals who he is by one touch. Oh, I see who you are. Yeah. And then he holds on with every ounce that he can muster, and he says, bless me, I will not let you go. And that is every effort in his body, he is saying, please, don't abandon me. You know, it was a scary night, and what is the Lord saying? We know that's the Lord of the covenant. The Lord is saying, I'm glad to be with you. As a matter of fact, to prove that I'm glad to be with you, I'm going to change your name. And that name means victory, means you have overcome fear. And you can now live in joy. And so he's empowered. When we face some of the most difficult experiences in our life, the worst, bad, and scary often is God himself. And once we meet our worst, bad, and scary, we find out that he's not bad and scary. He's actually our source of joy. And that's what gives us power. So the same person who caused me the most intense joy is the one who now produces joy. And we see that throughout Scripture, all the stories. Last one. Joseph. This is the fourth father of Israel. Joseph, he was not able to express his identity within his family. Isn't that right? Not fully. He's the youngest at that time. Then, of course, Benjamin. But he comes from a family with a lot of contention, vying for, from these four mothers, vying for first place. And we're going to fast forward. Let's see if I can find where I just lost. I'm going to fast forward here to trying to think of how much time had passed. I think it was about 12 years. I could be wrong. On his way to Egypt, he makes a decision. Based on his father knowing God, he says, I'm going to know God face to face. Whatever happens in my life, I'm going to choose to turn my face to God. We know different stories, Potiphar's wife, etc. But we come to the grand finale, the story where he meets his brothers, and his father. So think of how God has orchestrated this circumstance. God orchestrated this circumstance because people were hungry, and they're going to go where the food is. They don't know anything about what's awaiting them. And so in this setting, God is playing through Joseph, because Joseph is making the decision himself. He says, I need to test something. I need to test to see where their identity lies. Okay, are they just into their own identity, or have they developed a group identity, faithfulness to their father, faithfulness to God? And so he puts on the hard face, and you are spies. What are you doing here? You're here to spy out the land. And you know the end of the story. He reveals, I'm Joseph, your brother. You remember what happened? Oh my, we're done now. But in that experience, they have already been forgiven. And what happens is that we have brothers, all the brothers, Joseph and all the brothers are united in one group, including the father, all the families. They're united in one group identity, and at the same time, their individual identity was preserved. So they can act, each is acting out of their individual identity. Joseph is acting out of his individual identity. And then they have a group identity, which is we are acting like a united family in the presence of God, the proof that we are like God and we belong to God. And the Egyptians are included in this setting, because the Egyptians, their hearts are also involved. And so they become also a part of this group identity. So we could say that God, through circumstances, we could say that he broke up the family that was headed for a disaster. It was it's in many ways a dysfunctional family. And he reunites the family under a new identity, and that new identity is that we are acting out of our faith in God. We are face to face. We've come face to face with God through Joseph. That's what was exemplified. Now we see that all this time we were face to face with God. He orchestrated this. That dream that he saw, 23 years ago, well, that's what God was up to. He was up to bring us face to face with each other at the same time that he was bringing us face to face with himself. So heaven and earth came together. These four longings are in four fathers. We call them the forefathers of Israel because what does Israel mean? Wrestling with God. Each of them wrestled in 4 different rooms, and they were victorious. And they achieved the goal of acting out of God, their God-given identity. These 4 longings, if we look at brain science, they actually are progressive stages. You have to have belonging first before your brain will turn on glad to be together. You have to have glad to be together before it turns on synchronization, and synchronization before it turns on what we call our group identity. Which one would the devil be out to hit? If he could get the first one, he gets them all. If God can build it, then we're secure. We're actually walking into and staying in the family by staying in this idea we have of house. So the heart of God is always answering these 4 longings. And it's impossible, if we really think about it, it's impossible for us to talk or think about God without talking about family attachment and these 4 longings. The face of Jesus is everything to us. His face is expressing his faith in us. And we are learning just by family attachment what this word righteousness means. Righteousness means full body to full body. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for attaching us to you through full body, face-to-face experiences. We thank you that you've written this so deep into our right brain that we can't miss it. And that we don't have to know theological words. We don't have to know long, complicated formulas, arguments, etc. We just have to know you within a family environment that is in your image. And we thank you for giving us stories that we can walk into that image and thus give you permission to heal us by healing our right brain, which is the same thing as giving us a new heart. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.